Hi everyone, how's it going? Welcome to TeenMeets. I'm Gustavo, the Brazilian ambassador of the organization and a host of this meeting. Today, I'm here with Cory. He's the founder and CEO of Grow Ensemble. That is a podcast and recently also a YouTube channel, uh, which aims to spread knowledge about sustainable and socially responsible business practice in business. So, hi, Cory. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
So today we are going to talk about uh, the mainly focus will be on the sustainable business and social practice on the business and entrepreneurship world. So to start this conversation, I would like to know a little bit more about your background in the area of sustainable business and what made you interested in it.
Sure. Well, I first started my career in digital marketing, running a digital marketing agency that served clients all over the United States and in Canada. That was my first job after leaving university a little bit early. And I came in on the ground floor with that company. And as the fourth employee, I worked in that business as it grew rather quickly and grew to a couple $1 million in revenue and 25 full-time staff or so and 100 clients. And after a couple of years, I worked my way up to the CEO position.
Yeah.
And at that position, I kind of came to realize that what I was hoping to do for the staff and the culture of the company was a bit in conflict with what the owners wanted for the company. So I didn't own any of that company, so I didn't kind of have the ultimate say in it. And so I did have a very close mentor who was one of the owners, a 50-50 owner in that company, and he ended up leaving. He got bought out. And so when he left, I decided to resign from my position. And I had a lot of questions at that point, really, as to how business can be done in a potentially ethical and sustainable way. This took me on something of an existential crisis, as I developed these skills and, wondered what I was going to do next. But I always had been attracted to entrepreneurship because I thought it was a very creative endeavor, kind of making and manifesting what it was that I wanted to see in the world, through business. And so I struggled a little bit with that initial desire and that ambition with, how that can be done in a way that aligns with my values. But I ended up getting recommended to check out the certified B Corporation community that's based here. It's all over all over the world, but the headquarters is in the United States. And this was at the recommendation of my then girlfriend, now my wife, who said to check them out. These are businesses that may seem more like you, in the style in which you want to create and run a business. And so I looked them up. They had a conference that was near where I lived at the time that was coming up in about a month. And I reached out to volunteer so I could meet folks and go to the conference for free, which is a really great piece of advice that I'd give if you're interested in learning about a particular sector or space. And I met people there, and the kind of, the rest was history from then on. I thought that, these were my people. I wanted to learn more about the way in which they did business, what the balance were, what kind of the challenges were in running a business of this nature. And I started Grow Ensemble shortly after. To immerse myself predominantly in this community of businesses and business people.
All right, awesome. So the next question is, can you tell me a little bit more about your work on Grow Ensemble?
Yeah, you bet. And so Grow Ensemble is a media and education company. And what we're trying to do is provide people with the tools, the resources in the community to advance them on wherever they're at on their own impact journey. And so we predominantly do that through the content that we produce. We produce educational content through our podcast, as you mentioned at the start of our conversation, our blog and our YouTube channel. I write a weekly newsletter too that we send out to our list of email subscribers. And we're hoping that information equips people with the resources and inspiration that they need to potentially take action, big and small, that's meaningful and ideally is directed at some sort of social or environmental change.
Yeah, that's awesome. And before I go ahead and talk about the other questions, I would like to mention that the Grow Ensemble weekly letter and newsletter is pretty informative, and is actually pretty interesting because there seems to be a conversation between Cory and the reader. So I really like this newsletter. So moving on to the other question. So you mentioned about environmental friendly business and social responsible uh, entrepreneurship, but I would like to know what is social entrepreneurship and environmental friendly business.
Sure. Well, the difficulty is that there's no one definition right now. But as I see social entrepreneurship, that is the pursuit of entrepreneurship, of starting and sustaining and growing a business that has some sort of social or environmental impact at its core. So really the reason that the business exists is to make some sort of impact, be it social or environmental, whatever it might be. This contrasts a little bit with traditional business that may have some sort of charitable arm to it. They do some sort of philanthropic work. They donate. They participate or collaborate with local nonprofits or global nonprofits. But impact is not really the core of what they do. There's companies like Nike, for example. Impact's not really what they do, but they have a very big CSR department. I'm not advocating that Nike's a really great company, but that's an example of that, as opposed to other companies that are in this space to where the reason that they started their business was to address some particular problem or issue that they saw in the world. Oftentimes this is environmental. Someone's creating a new product, being in a particular sector, fashion, coffee, whatever it is, that is done ethically. It treats workers the way that they deserve to be treated. It's done sustainably. In the context of coffee, things are grown. The agricultural process is regenerative and restorative to the local ecosystems in which it's done, as opposed to exploitative and extractive. These businesses exist because they saw, typically the founders or the founding group saw some sort of injustice or problem or challenge that needed to be solved. So it's why it exists. And so, maybe that is a bit too broad and kind of hard to boil down to a single definition, but that's a bit of the issue right now, is that no one's really defined it super, super clearly.
Yeah. So could you share some of your favorite companies that are environmentally friendly or socially responsible?
Yeah, definitely. For one, let's see, the shirt that I'm wearing right now is from a Canadian company called Tree. Yeah. And they started their business with a simple idea of planting 10 trees to ultimately sequester carbon from the atmosphere, to plant 10 trees for every one product that is sold on their site. So it was a very basic concept that they started with, and they've come to evolve the products that they create to be more sustainable themselves, from the materials that they source, where they source them from. But this company was originally formed out of a tree planting company. So I interviewed the CEO of this company, Derek Emsley, a really excellent person. And him and his founders, they had a tree planting company previously, and then they started to turn it into what became Ten Tree, an apparel company. So their primary focus was impact, what they wanted to do and what they saw was an important environmental need. Other than that, I guess we got a little kind of shoulder bag back there. That's from a company called Cotopaxi. They're based in Salt Lake City, Utah, and their tagline or their slogan is creating gear for good. And so they do a lot of work in addressing global poverty, as an example. And that was a lot of the reason in which the founder, David Smith, started the company, was to really kind of build some sense of community with people who had this interest in being something of a global citizen, people who would support an adventure gear company, to get them engaged in something deeper than just, apparel, outdoor gear, that kind of stuff. So those are a couple examples that I really like. And, I'm kind of maybe taking a shortcut by just looking around the room.
Yeah. Now that you mentioned these companies, I remember one that is pretty appealing for me. That is a good company. I think they are based. I don't know where they are based.
They're in Sweden.
Yeah,
good company.
yeah, that's it. And so they seem to be pretty awesome, and I'm working on with them to possibly get a donation from them to support my fundraiser campaign. But that's another story. And I I remember from one of your videos, you talked about a chocolate company that aims to be slavery free. What is their name?
Tony's Chocolonely.
Yeah, that's it. They seem to be pretty thoughtful about what they are doing. So yeah, mm, moving on for the next question. So what are your thoughts about the reason why society has been so negligent with the environment and nature in general, especially in the business world?
Well, I think it's a bit of the product of the system that we've created with capitalism predominantly. The number one incentive in a capitalist system is to generate wealth and profit, essentially. And so that has come really at the cost of exploiting the workers, people around the globe, and as well extracting and exploiting the planet for all the rich natural resources that have been available and still are. And so it's really been this powerful driving force of predominantly a smaller group of people really benefiting from it, that has continued to have, I think, the entire populations be a bit negligent, as you explained, because it's a bit difficult to adjust and change that momentum, because that sort of system is really strong and ingrained at this point, and it benefits very grossly a very small, powerful group of people. And so it's in their interest to kind of keep things as they are. And so I think that everything from culture and narrative and messaging, a lot of those really large corporations and folks who are kind of at the top, use whatever sort of power and influence that they have available to us to convince us that things should sort of remain the same, as opposed to any sort of different economic model.
Yeah, it seems to me that these organizations and corporations, they rely on a system that is so dense that is almost impossible to break up and like try to uh, remain on the positive side. But we are seeing a lot of
It can be challenging.
I think impossible. It's not a quite good word, but it's really challenging to like convince corporations to care about the environment, even though they say a lot that they care, even when they don't care.
I'm with you on that. It's,
Yeah,
and I'm not sure if it's necessarily about convincing corporations. There are some smaller brands, small businesses
yeah,
and mid-sized businesses that really do take the care that's necessary for preserving, protecting the world that we live in, and ideally creating something that's a bit more equitable and habitable for more of us than just a few of us. But and if businesses aren't open to being convinced, then
yeah,
we have to seek other mechanisms of change, right? And because I don't think we can count on businesses. A lot of these businesses, very few of them, have really kind of contributed the largest to say the climate crisis. For one, it's very difficult to expect that they're going to solve the problems that they caused. It
yeah,
seems to be something of a foolish idea that we think that that's the way that we should go about it, is to have these same people who said, who have created the issue say, hey, let us solve it. So I do think that we'll have to look through, other mechanisms. There are a lot of great small and mid-sized businesses. It's predominantly some large offenders, but a small group of large offenders, which is, means for perhaps achieving change through a different channel.
yeah. So what do you think about why society, especially business, begin to carry about environment and like the social uh, source of their production more recently, especially within the time of 10 or 15 years?
Yeah, well, I think people are demanding it. So, I think, folks like you, like myself, people all over the world are interested in some sort of change, be it something social, be it something environmental. The climate crisis is kind of, become more and more prevalent upon us here as of late. We had a lot of very significant social justice movements take very meaningful, effective action over the course of the last couple of years. And so, corporations are responding, businesses are responding to that. It's a combination of other people getting into business who just kind of believe these things. They do walk the walk and they talk the talk. But other larger businesses, because they do know that, ultimately at the end of the day, they have to at least appeal, to the people who are buying their products. They're going to start positioning and messaging a little bit differently to have them seem kind of like everyone else. We're in it with you to make the planet and healthy and sustainable for generations to come. We're with you to create equity and advance social justice. So we got to be cautious, and skeptical to discern what's actually marketing and what's actually the mission. Because those corporations and advertisers are pretty good at doing that, in manipulating that sort of communication to, kind of still make it seem like they're on our side.
It's like greenwashing.
It's exactly what it is. Yeah.
Yeah. So, what do you think it's an effective way or effective ways to make a sustainable change and participate on this positive change? And how can business participate in it? Yeah,
Well, I think that's a big question. And, it depends on who we're talking about, individuals or businesses. I definitely think that it's always valuable, to look at your own individual impacts on a day-to-day basis. It's sometimes hard to see exactly how that connects to the bigger picture. If you take one action, if you compost your food waste, or maybe make a more conscious purchase if you choose to support one business or another, or whatever it might be, maybe to bike versus drive a car. It's hard sometimes to understand what seems like the impact of that seemingly small action in the bigger picture. But I think that that's really indirectly valuable. Even if it's not removing what would be a lot of carbon from the atmosphere very directly, those things add up and they compound over time. Not just to add to your own total of what becomes ideally a positive environmental impact, but it influences other people around you, and it creates something of a culture. as well. If you are taking action personally to live a more sustainable lifestyle, to maybe use, your creative skills and cognitive capacities that you have to leave the world a better place than you found it, then, maybe your friends and family will be encouraged to do the same. And I think that, at least for the business lens, I think it's the same thing, is to kind of, look at, a successful business does have the opportunity to really create a massive amount of resources, more resources than any one individual, resources, predominantly money, that any one individual could create, over the span of their whole lifetime. So very successful businesses, it's not just something that is nice for them to do, but at the point that we're at in the world, it's an obligation, it's a responsibility that they have to think about, one, what they can do to potentially, positively impact the world around them, but as well, look at what they're doing currently and see how it can perhaps be less destructive, less exploitative, and it's hard. Sometimes it's a progression for people just because, they need information, they need support. They're not aware, of exactly all the perhaps ill, or wrongdoing that they're participating in, but you got to start somewhere, and so businesses have a really, really large potential for change. And they, if they have platforms available to them, they should encourage and organize people around some sort of social and environmental good.
Yeah, I think for the individual side, I think at least for me, I think that when you think globally and act locally, you can really make a real change, not just fancy words, uh, because you can, for example, what I'm doing here is not a big project, but it can influence other people around me, like my parents and other young people that are might wondering if they want to become sustainable or not. And so, another thing that I guess it's important is to, when you try to be more sustainable, the first thing that you can do is look at your uh, what you buy and what you consume. So you can start to figure out what like brands and what companies are more sustainable, and try to make these changes. And if you research a little bit, you can find those companies, uh, uh, small and mid-sized companies that are actually doing very good, and you will be able to have your conscious clean and participate on this change. And also, if you have the money, you can donate to organizations. With the technology, you can donate a lot of money with just 3 clicks of buttons. So I think
Sure.
that start is the most crucial thing, and but also the most difficult. And so we talk a lot about the environmental side of business, but so let's touch a little bit about the social side. So how do you see business taking socially responsible practice that aim to make a positive change on people, especially related to inequalities?
Sure. Well, I think that predominantly starts with the workers that are touching a business from any point in its operations. Some businesses, depending on their scale, touch communities all over the globe, literally. And they do have a real opportunity to positively impact the lives of the people who work with them and work for them. And the businesses who are doing it right are ensuring that they're paying people a very healthy living wage. And so they have an opportunity, these individuals, these people working, have an opportunity to not have to work multiple jobs, work one job, have that consistency, that stability that's helpful to so many. invest back in themselves, back in their families, in education for themselves and for their families, truly be able to make a wage that allows them to develop some sense of progress and personal and professional investment that that everyone on this globe deserves. So I think that it starts first and foremost with the workers, and that's probably where companies should start to evaluate it. Because if you're not treating your workers the way in which you should, then it doesn't make so much sense to look outside of that. After that, though, if you got that nailed and you're doing that right, obviously you look at your customers, those stakeholders. How are your products and services affecting those people? Are they better off because of the product that you produce, the service that you produce? And can go down a really massive rabbit hole, because there's the consideration too of how do you produce the product that you sell, and how do you create the service that you do. And this is where it comes to considering what's the impact of all the communities, or in this context, the business context, called the stakeholders. How are all the stakeholders being impacted by just your business operating? From the communities in which your materials are farmed and sourced, to the factories that folks are working in who create your products, to customers at the end of the supply chain. How is everyone being treated?
Yeah, that's awesome. So for the last part of this meeting, I would like to touch a little bit on the young side of this movement. So, how do you feel about the young movement related to social entrepreneurship and environmentally friendly business?
I feel great about it. I think it's very encouraging to see more young people have a preference for doing work that feels meaningful. And what it seems to be is the thing that, what young people are discerning as meaningful is work that positively affects their communities and the planet, as you're mentioning, both locally and globally, however it might be. So I'm very encouraged by it, and it makes a lot of sense. Like we want, to have meaningful work. We want to have impactful work. We want to feel a sense of purpose in what we do. And, time after time, you'll see people avoid, really kind of answering that call to finding some, we don't all need to seek some massive deep purpose in the work that we do, but rightfully so, we want to, feel very connected to the work that we do. It's where we spend a lot of time throughout our lives. So I'm very encouraged by it. And it's, I want to continue to encourage and support it myself.
Yeah. So for the last question, what is your advice for young people around the globe that want to be part of this movement and take more sustainable and social actions?
I think it's to start building some sort of community around you, and follow your curiosities and your ambitions as it relates to this space. If you have questions about, whatever it is as it relates to social impact, environmental sustainability, find experts who may have answers for you. I think that you'd be surprised at how many people are open and generous with their time to respond to an email, maybe hop on a Zoom call with you, and offer support to you along your journey. I think there's enough people who are very interested in, supporting folks who want to be a part of doing some sort of good, that, you'll have no trouble finding mentors, if you put in the effort to reach out, and be curious, be open to learning, and just kind of taking what seem like risks to reach out and connect with people who you want to learn from and get mentored by.
Yeah, in short, just start and reach out to people and like build this network with people that are like-minded you.
That's right.
Yeah. So thanks, Cory, for being here today. I really appreciate your time. and consideration. And I see you later.
Sounds good. Thanks for
Bye.
hosting me.